see. So a lot of the challenges that you are faced with today is that you've got multi-vendors providing you some type of security posture, right? And that could be, you've got an AV vendor, you might have a firewall, you might have an IPS system, you might have, EDR platform on the endpoint, VPN technologies, et cetera, right? And they roughly say there's about 40 to 50 security vendors in large organizations, right? So if you look at some of the largest organizations that have been compromised, they've all been following this multi-vendor type approach, right? They've got lots of different technologies, but the difference with them is and the difference between a lot of organizations, at least in Canada, is that they have dedicated security teams, right? We don't necessarily have that, at least in some of the verticals that we deal with, right? And we have folks that are network/security or system/security. These guys have dedicated security individuals, but yet they're still being compromised. So you got to start questioning whether or not this approach works. We believe it doesn't. So the first question you got to start asking yourself is, how fragmented is that? And how well do they work together? And then how good is my team in managing all of these different topics, right? It's going to be challenging at best. And we like to think at Cisco that this has been part of the contribution to why we see an influx of compromise, right? The other thing is that you have to consider is that the perimeter is starting to dissolve, right? Well, once we used to have that moat around that castle, that was good enough. But that doesn't exist anymore, right? People are mobile, they move around. And the other big pressing item around this is that you're getting introduced more and more, and you will over the next few years, IoT devices, right? You're going to be pushed to put these assets onto your network because they provide value to the business itself. So the perimeter is gone. It's still going to be there, right? You're still going to need firewalls and IPS systems to block the front door, but you're going to have to extend it beyond. The other aspect of that is cloud, right? You're going to have, if you're not already using cloud, at least email, Office 365, you're going to move towards that trend, right? Everybody's moving towards it. There's going to be some aspect of cloud. And even if you're not using it today or you don't have sanctioned applications for the cloud, most likely your users are using it without going to IT to get help because they don't have to, right? It's self-service. They can go and do it, but the challenge now is, where's that data being stored? Who's it being shared with? Is it confidential data? All of that obviously poses additional questions, right? And concerns. Like, why do I need all this? I'm just a small insurance organization, right? I don't really need some of these technologies, I don't think, right? And the short answer is that if I'm an attacker, right? If I'm somebody that's trying to make some money, is it easier for me to go through the front door of the largest insurance company, right? Or is it better for me to go through the door of a smaller organization that may not have the staff or the technologies to mitigate risk? So threat intelligence. So when you're going and looking and deciding on a vendor to partner with, because honestly it should be a partnership. You should be looking for technologies that will integrate and automate together and provide you a rich set of threat intelligence. And that threat intelligence should be shared amongst all the platforms that you have, right? So things like 600 billion email messages per day, right? 16 billion web requests, right? 1.5 million file samples, that's what we see per day. It's crazy. There's 250 engineers that are focused on the research side, right? These are part of the Talos umbrella that look at the threats, understand the threats. They work with the teams internally. I don't need to, because we have email security, I don't need to go, okay, we've got this intelligence from a third-party email security provider. I don't need to second guess it. The guys and gals in the room can talk to each other and say, hey, what are you seeing on that side? Well, I'm seeing, right? They can work together and come up with a solution. That you plug in a laptop, and this is the stuff you should ask, right? Any security vendor. If I plug my laptop in, and at any point it changes its disposition, right? It becomes ugly, because maybe I was at Starbucks 20 minutes ago. And if I plug it in my network, is my network smart enough to know that something has changed and move it off the network automatically. Maybe this is 2 a.m., right? Or if an asset comes in and makes an attempt to make a command and control channel outbound, sure, the firewall may block it, but maybe you want some other integration pieces where it actually takes that asset and moves it into a quarantine VLAN automatically, right? Because the risk is that that asset may be mobile or something more might happen. So maybe you want to move it off and do some other looks at it, right? Or other checks. So anyways, comprehensive architecture is something that you want to think about. Security shouldn't be a point product anymore, right? Best of breed, yeah, that's a check. You need that, and you want an integrated architecture. So what can you do? So some of the things that you can do. One of the easiest things that everybody in this room is probably not doing is DNS. You can add a layer of security using DNS that provides something that you haven't done up to this date, or most haven't done up to this date. And the advantages is it's port agnostic, right? So proxies are great, web proxies are great. The problem with proxies is it's 8443 or web protocols, right? It's not all protocols. Next-gen firewalls, well, they can do all protocols. But I have to establish a connection before it does certain things. At DNS layer, everything uses DNS. 91% of malware uses DNS. Why? Because they're trying to get away from being blacklisted, right? They don't want that IP address, that static IP address or multiple IP addresses being blacklisted. So they use DNS to be able to flip them out very quickly so they don't get caught, or what they hope is they don't get caught. So they use algorithms, right, the main-generated algorithms to do that. But 91% of the attacks happen here. This is your first line of defense. Everything makes a DNS request. The outliers, the 9% that do IP, right? So if I have malware that's doing direct to IP, then I have the ability to use our client, right, to mitigate that, right? So we give you about 50,000 known bad IPs. But we can do things like intelligent proxy with Cisco Umbrella, formerly OpenDNS. So what does that mean? Well, the problem with proxies, and we sell proxies today, right? We still do, and they have their place. But the problem with proxies is that a lot of times it breaks application and there's latency, right? Now with OpenDNS or Umbrella, I'm going to use them interchangeably because a lot of people still know it as OpenDNS, is that you do it at the DNS layer, and I can redirect within our cloud infrastructure any element that I feel it should be proxied. So now you get intelligent proxy. Only proxy things that need to be proxied. Right? A lot of this is quick allow, deny, block, right? Like it's very easy to do. Well, it's not easy to do. You need the intelligence backend technology. But for a product, it's easy to do, right? It cleans up those threats as they're coming in. The other thing is just the other thing I don't need. SSL. I don't have to worry about decryption. Right? I'm doing it again at the DNS layer. Now we do offer SSL decryption, but I don't need to worry about it in the same fashion as I would with typical, next-gen type firewalls, right? And we have next-gen firewalls too. So, but this is a layer that you can use. If someone calls Tim and says, "Hey, what's going on? I need help right there. We've got this thing, and I know we don't use any of your security products or whatever." Tim's going to say, or he'd probably call me right on the phone, probably really nervous, right? And say, "Jay, what am I going to tell him? He's on the other line, right?" And I'll just say, "Well, let's get him OpenDNS. Let's get him a Cisco Umbrella account. Turn it on. You forward your DNS internally to us, right? And it's the fastest DNS by third-party testing in North America. And we provided you an instant layer of security without having to significantly change your infrastructure." And there's more, right? Obviously, I can't deep dive in every product, right? Cloud, right? How many sanctioned applications do you have in the cloud? You might have one or two. You may not have any that at least today the organization sanctioned, right? So that means that here's, like at Cisco, we use Box, right? We use Box to store our files. If I store a file up in Box that shouldn't be in Box, you have the ability to take that file out, right? So DLP, right? Making sure that that file doesn't get out to the cloud, right? The other thing it can do is things like making sure that I'm sharing that data with the right people, right? So, there's multiple different applications. It'll help with shadow IT. OpenDNS will help with shadow IT as well. But CASB, right? So think about that.